And we are live. Greetings, faithful. Thank you for joining me again tonight. Once again, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I am here to bring you all another Patreon-sponsored movie review. So, thank you all for joining me tonight. Thank you all for coming out. All right, so tonight's review, this was requested once again by OAW patron 00 Soldier. Shout out to you, fam. Thanks again for another donation. Thanks again for another request. And tonight I am going to be giving you all my thoughts on the 1987 fantasy adventure comedy film, The Princess Bride. Yes, that's right. The Princess Bride. That's what we're talking about. No typo. It's not an error. We're going to talk about The Princess Bride. All right. So I'm going, for those of you all, I got a lot of young kids that watch my channel, so maybe they haven't gotten around to seeing this. So for those of you all who have not seen The Princess Bride, I will give you all a very brief, non-spoiler rundown at the very start of this one, but I'm probably going to spend the majority of this video talking about spoilers just because, the film is 32 years old now. Most people have seen it. It's a cult classic. The other thing too is, what's funny about this movie is there are so many reviews and retrospectives on this film online right here on YouTube. Everything that could be said about this film has probably already been said. So I'm just going to chime in with what I think about it. We're going to talk about it a little bit, and we'll go ahead and we'll mention it in the comments and whatnot, bounce some ideas off each other back and forth, so on and so forth. Sound good? Sound cool? All right, so let's get into it. All right, so The Princess Bride, as I mentioned before, this is the 1987 fantasy adventure comedy film. It is an adaptation of the 1973 novel of the same name by William Goldman, and this film was directed and co-produced by Rob Reiner, and it stars Cary Elwes, Wright, in what I think was her first leading actress role, Mandy Patinkin, Chris Sarandon, Wallace Shawn, André the Giant, and Christopher Guest. All right, and so brief synopsis of what the film is. So, The Princess Bride is a story that is introduced to us, the audience, through the perspective of a young boy played by Fred Savage, who is bedridden. He's ill, and his grandfather comes to visit him to spend time with him and sort of kind of cheer him up. And so his grandfather reveals to him, "Oh, I'm going to read a story to you that I read to your father, that my father read to me when I was sick, and I read to your father when he was sick, so I'm going to read it to you." And so the story in question is The Princess Bride. And so as the grandson is being told the story, we get to see the story unfold in the actual film. So you actually have two stories being told at the same time. There's the fictional story from the book, but then there's also the story of the grandson and of the grandfather telling the story to his grandson and them having that little bonding experience. So The Princess Bride story pretty much tells the story of a young man named Wesley and a young woman named Buttercup who grow up together on a farm, and then once they reach adulthood, they go their separate ways. Wesley, as we are told, who, he was a farmhand, peasant worker, if you will. He leaves the farm to go out and seeks his fortune, and we learn that he was killed by pirates. Buttercup becomes the object of the prince of their kingdom. He becomes the object of her eye, and she becomes his fiance. Now, then we do a time skip, and the conflict ensues when, on the eve of their wedding, she's kidnapped by a group of mercenaries, bandits, if you will. And so out of the blue, a masked fighter comes to her rescue, and he has to take on all three bandits in order to rescue her. In the process, we learn that there's a deeper plot at play. The fact that she was kidnapped wasn't happenstance. And B, we find out that the mysterious masked fighter, I mean, I guess I can go ahead and spoil it. It's Wesley. It's Wesley. Wesley comes back. You find out that he isn't dead, that he is actually the pirate that we were told killed him. But he comes back to the land in order to rescue Buttercup from her. It's not made clear in the film if he was coming to stop her from getting married or if he was coming to rescue her after being kidnapped, because the period of time in which Wesley shows up and when the prince finds out she's been kidnapped, we're not clear on how much time has actually passed. It seems like it's only been a day or two, right? But of course, we find out throughout the film that actually her kidnapping, that was part of a plot contrived by the prince so that he can scapegoat her and use her quote unquote assassination as the linchpin to wage a war against a rival country. So it was a power play. That was the whole reason why he wanted Buttercup as his fiance in the first place. But the whole story is supposed to be, this epic quest to save your true love and all of that, fantastical stuff that's great for children to watch and to, see and everything, right? But in the midst of all of this, we get some really colorful characters. We get some okay, can I just talk about this real quick? Most of this film, you can tell, was shot on a soundstage, but it's a pretty damn impressive stage setting, if I do say so myself, especially that fire swamp, because that's all practical. But I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about that. So like I said, throughout the course of this film, we get some really cool action. We get some hilarious comedy. We get some cool set designs. We get some pretty cool costume pieces. All in all, dude, what's so cool about this movie, and I'm just going to go ahead and use this to jump into my overall thoughts on the movie as a whole. What's so cool about this movie, as much as it lives up to a lot of these classical tropes when we're dealing with these fantastical sort of like fantasy, especially romance stories, right? At the same time, this film, kind of like the last movie that my man 00 Soldier requested, The Last Dragon, this film is a parody. It's a parody on fantasy, adventure, romance stories. And it's a self-aware parody, meaning that a lot of the jokes and a lot of the humor in the film is commenting on those tropes, right? But it also plays itself, just like The Last Dragon did, where it played itself as a straight kung fu film. This one plays itself as a straight fantasy film. So even though it is making a farce of these tropes, it's still reinforcing them at the same time. So what's cool about it is when you look at it from that perspective, right? That's why I said this is a great family film, because the kids, they'll take it at face value, right? This film plays no different than probably your standard like classic Disney animated film, right? It's kind of in that same spirit, right? So the kids will get off on that, right? Like that's what they'll get into. But because of that satire that I talked about, you have something for the parents. You have something for the adults. And the parents can watch it and then they can get nostalgic and reminisce about some of the, the movies and the stories they heard when they were coming up. And they're like, oh yeah, that is sort of the, funny thing. So that's kind of the cool thing about this, about the movie. And I will also go as far as to say this. It's really cool because no matter how many times you watch this movie and no matter how old you get, it's always, the jokes are still funny. The jokes are still funny because you're looking at it from that perspective of being an adult watching what normally is sort of, kids fare, right? So you still get a kick out of it. So yeah. All right. So let me talk a little bit more about the writing. hands down, the dialogue in this film, more so than the actual plot. Because like I said, in terms of the plot of The Princess Bride, it's very formulaic. It's supposed to be, right? But the dialogue is what made that's sort of the standout in the writing. The comedy is on point. And technically this is sort of categorized under the acting, but even the delivery of the comedy is really good. But I'll touch a little bit more about that when I get into the acting portion. But the dialogue is really good. The comedy is really good, but not just the comedy in the Princess Bride story, but also the banter between the grandson and the granddad is really, really good. In terms of comedy, like what type of comedy it is, I would go as far as to say that it is in the Mel Brooks house of comedy. So with a dash of Monty Python. It's not full-blown Monty Python, but that same sense of humor is there. But if you like anything by Mel Brooks, right? Anything by Mel Brooks, it's that comedy. That's the style, that's the flavor of comedy you're gonna get. So that pretty much takes care of the dialogue itself. Now, like I said, in terms of the plot, as formulaic as it is, me personally, I still dig it because here's the thing about this. I like those sort of traditional, like those sort of like the Western fantasy traveler stories, especially the ones where the enemies you beat throughout the course of the story end up becoming your allies later on. I like that gimmick. I really like that gimmick. It's the same sort of thing for any of my JRPG fans. You know, this is in Final Fantasy, you know, so many of those JRPG games where, you know, you beat a boss and then 3 or 4 levels later, the boss joins you on your quest. It's right up, I mean, if you want to talk about classical literature, it's right up there with Arthur and Lancelot. It's right up there with Robin Hood and Little John. So Princess Bride incorporates that trope. I really dig that. The classical revenge trope, which is one of my favorite aspects of the movie with Inigo. Inigo Montoya, you killed my father. Prepare to die. I love that, right? So we have the classical revenge trope. We have I don't know if I would go as far as to say, well, there are bits and pieces of the hero's journey. It doesn't really follow the hero's journey specifically, unless you look at it from Buttercup's perspective. Actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, it does share some commonality with the hero's journey, but not from Wesley's perspective, from Buttercup's perspective, because you have the call to action, which is when, well, her call to action would be when she's kidnapped. The refusal of the call happens when she actually she calls herself trying to man up to Wesley, right? And then, of course, she finds out that, you know, Dread Pirate Roberts was actually Wesley. Journey into the unknown world. That's the fire pit. Yeah, you know what? It's kind of funny. Usually, see, it's funny. I should have wrote this out ahead of time, because now the more I think about it, I'm coming up with so much different stuff. You know, usually in these types of stories, the damsel in distress is always the boon to be won, right? But that's not true. Technically speaking, the boon to be won is her and Wesley's relationship. Wesley, if in fact the Princess Bride incorporates elements of the hero's journey from Buttercup's perspective, Wesley's the boon, not Buttercup. So there's a funny little subversion of classical narrative tropes right there. Very clever. Very clever. But then again, that's also one of the things that has incorporated itself with this film that has made it the cult classic that it's become, because people have picked up on that. I'm not the first one to think of that. Other people have picked up on that, and that's why it's so popular. All right, so now let's go ahead. Let's segue into the acting, and let's segue into the characters. Everybody's acting, for the most part, is good. I say for the most part because Chris Sarandon, he does the role he's supposed to do, and he does it well. He's just kind of boring. That's my only real criticism in terms of anyone's acting in the movie. I'll be honest with y'all. Anyone's acting in the movie. The only one that really kind of has me as, nah, it's okay. It's not fantastic. It's all right. It's Chris Sarandon. And like I said, it's because he's kind of boring. Yeah. It's because he's kind of boring. But other than that, Cary Elwes, he's great. He's always great. I've been a fan of his since Robin Hood Men in Tights. I've always liked that actor. He's great. Robin Wright, of course, she's done better roles since, but this being one of her first major roles, she plays Buttercup well enough. Of course, the MVP of the film, those go to Wallace Shawn, André the Giant, my man Manny, because in respective order, Vicini, Fitz, and Inigo, those are probably the most colorful characters in the film. They're the most entertaining. They're phenomenal. But you know what? I forgot my man Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal is another one out there because, man, oh my God. Billy Crystal is my favorite part of this movie. He's my favorite role in this movie. He's my favorite performance in this movie. I love Billy Crystal as what is it? Magic Max. I love him in this role, man. He's hilarious. Granted, it's a cameo performance because he's only in that one scene, but I love Billy Crystal in this movie. So yeah, those are the best performed roles in my opinion. The characters are really well done, and they're really well developed. Because you know what's funny? In just the small amount of time we spend with them prior to the action sequences, we get a backstory, we get character motivation, and by the end of the film, we get a full character arc. There's an opportunity for change for not for Vicini, because he fell folly to his logic because he was just so much smarter than everyone else, right? But for Inigo and Fetz, they got to redeem themselves. They become heroes by the end and all that jazz. But what's cool about it is it's not a complete turn. We find out even early on, before they fight Wesley, that they're not all bad. They're just hired hands. They're just doing this for a gig, but they're actually really decent-hearted guys, right? So I like that three-dimensionality that we get with what is typically two-dimensional characters in most classical examples. Let me see. Anything else I want to mention about the acting before I move on? Oh, well, so earlier I mentioned about the reason why the comedy is so good is because the delivery sticks. Everyone's delivery stick. Everyone's comedy is on point. And like I said, even Chris Sarandon with his, I don't want to say his performance is stoic, but it is wooden. And it's supposed to be wooden because he's playing a caricature, right? But even his deliveries, as wooden as they are, they still land and it still makes sense for that character. So yeah, all of that's really good. All right, so now let's see. We talked about writing, we talked about dialogue, we talked about characters, we talked about acting. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to segue because I want to talk about, I brought up the set design before, and I want to go back and I want to revisit that briefly. The sets are freaking phenomenal. Like I said, most of this was shot on soundstage, from what I can tell, because it looks like soundstage. It looks like, and the sets are about the size of a soundstage. So I'm pretty. It's safe to say it's mostly soundstage. But that being said, the fire swamp looks amazing. All of the practical and the pyrotechnics look amazing. Even the ugly ass, what are they? The rodents of unusual size. Even those fucking things, they're practical, right? So it's a real like fake giant rat, right? But I tell you this, I don't know, the one that we see before they attack Wesley, when Wesley and Buttercup go into the quicksand, and while they're under, we see that one walk across the set. I don't know if that was animatronic or not. That thing looks real when you first see it, because it's shot from a distance. We don't actually get a close-up of what that thing is. It looks real in that scene. And then, of course, when we get close-ups, we know, oh, it's fake, but it doesn't matter. The fact that it's all practical looks really good, right? This was the dead giveaway. The cliff top with the Wesley and Ego duel. Yeah, you can tell from that it's a set. But even that looks good, for the most part. And then here's the other thing too. Knowing that we are seeing a story told straight from a storybook, you can suspend your disbelief enough, even if something looks fake, because it's make believe, dude. It's a made up story, right? But I think it all works, if nothing else, because consider this: is it really that much different than if we were seeing this on a stage play? No, like that's exactly what it would look like if it was on a stage play, right? So yeah, I think that's cool. The castle design. Oh my God, what is it? What is it called? The Pit of Despair? Yeah, dude, the Pit of Despair with the machine, right? Dude, that's a real like water wheel. That's a giant water wheel, right? It's an actual water wheel. And then with the table and all the straps and stuff and everything that hooks up to Wesley when they're torturing him, all of that's cool. Magic Max's little hut looks like an old witch's hut or whatever. Dude, the set design is really good. The costume design is really good. The crowns, I think, look a little outlandish, a little absurd. But for the most part, everything else is cool. Wesley's outfit is really cool. I understand it's a costume, but those look like some really good boots he's wearing. Them things look sturdy as hell, and I kind of want a pair of those. I don't think I could pull off the whole swashbuckler thing, though. I don't think I could pull off that look. Anyway, it doesn't matter. All right, let's see. What else do I want to talk about? I can mention the music just very briefly. Wait, hold up. Before I go to music, also about set design. I want to mention this briefly just because I feel it would be disingenuous. So, The Princess Bride, this was one of the films I studied when I was still when I was still in college. Shout out. When I studied film in college, this was one of the films we looked at. And one of the things I remember from our discussion was we were talking about how you can use your set design to tell a story. Notice, we are never told where the real story of the film takes place, but we know it's Chicago. Why? Because look at all of the sports paraphernalia in the little boy's room at the beginning of the movie. He's a Cubs fan. There's a Chicago Bears on his wall. So we know, and the way in which those scenes are shot, you can tell it's someplace up north. Because it doesn't look like a Southern home. It doesn't look like LA. You can tell it's somewhere up north. But yeah, we're able to deduce that it's Chicago because of all the sports paraphernalia on his wall. Also, did you notice the Captain America action figure in the back on the shelf right behind his bed? So we know he's in the comics. He's playing a sports video game. That's the opening scene of the movie. So we know, he's a stereotypical grade school boy in the late 1980s, right? But just from the room, before the little boy even has to open his mouth, just from the room, we can already tell what that little boy is about. And that's really good. That's intentional. That's visual storytelling. That's really good set design. So now let's talk about the music. I don't have too many thoughts about the music just because, once again, plays into the classical tropes that are normally associated with this type of film, but the music is good. The sound cues, especially in the fire swamp, really good. When we have our musical cues to ramp up the tempo whenever we're in, this stressful, this anticipating scene, this anticipating moment, all of it plays. And then, of course, the full-blown swashbuckling score that we get in the Wesley Inigo duel, and then, of course, Inigo's duel at the end. I mean, it's big, it's bombastic, it's dramatic, it's melodramatic, and that's what it's supposed to be, because we finally reach the climax of Inigo's revenge plot. So it's supposed to be like that. Something else, though. I will throw this in real quick. I like that the big action number in the climax of the film happened with Inigo and not with Wesley. I like that Wesley's conflict was resolved through conversation. Wesley just straight up intimidated the dude. He called the dude out on his square. He's like, look, man, he's like, right now I'm laying in this bed and you think I'm incapacitated. You could be wrong, because I can do X, Y, and Z to you, because if I have to rise up, this is exactly what I'm going to do to you. So you can either take this route or you can just surrender now. The choice is yours. And of course, because Prince, Humperdinck, because he's a coward deep down, he gives himself up. But I love that it was a con. And that's how Wesley was able to, win the day, if you will. He was able to save the princess. He totally conned him out of it. He talked him out of it. But for someone as clever as Wesley, because we already know how clever Wesley is, we see it throughout the entire film. But if nothing else, it just sort of makes sense. And I like how all of that plays into Wesley, because Wesley is a pirate. That is what he actually does. And I like how that's reinforced, not just in the physical aspect of him being, this great sword fighter, but also in the mental as well. He can pretty much talk you. Wesley can literally talk you out of your crown. That's a hell of a mouthpiece. All right. So I'm getting ready. I'm coming up on 30 minutes now. I'm trying to see if there's anything else about the film I want to talk about. That pretty much sums it up. Like I said, if you have not seen it and you like these this type of film, by all means, check it out. If nothing else, if you are a fan of Mel Brooks and that's sort of your flavor of humor, it's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, it's a fun little romp. It's a fun little movie. It's not very long, because I was shocked because it's only like 80 minutes. I was shocked. I forgot how short it was. But it's a fun little movie. And like I said, it is a really cool family film. So if you're looking for something, to show your kids, if you got like some grade schoolers, like, 5, 6, 7, 8, hey man, this is right up their alley. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's see. Real quick, I'm going to see if there are any questions in the chat. I don't believe we have any. I see we got some people showing up today. Yo, shout out to my man Dragnot. Thanks for coming out. No Longer Human, shout out to you, man. Adrian Mark, shout out to you, fam. Danny Anime, shout out to you, dude. All right, so yeah, I'm coming up on the 30-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to conclude this review. I want to thank you all for joining me again tonight. And once again, another shout out to OAW Patron. Double O Soldier, once again, dude, thanks so much for supporting the channel. Thanks so much for the request. I got another one for you coming, bro. I got that one's actually coming probably probably at the end of this week. Because I'm gonna be knocking Use K Knight. What's happening, my dude? I'm gonna be knocking these ones out. I got at least one other one that's coming in a couple of days because I just got done watching that movie before I did this live stream, which is why I was kind of a little bit late because I had to wrap my brain around what the hell I just got done watching. I'm like, what the? I think I got it covered. So anyway, so real quick before I go, for any of you all, if you want to request either a movie that you want to see me review, the first 2 episodes of an hour-long television series, or 4 episodes of a half an hour-long television series, or an anime, and in any one of those things, if it's anime, if it falls under that as well. If you guys have anything that you all want me to review, please take a look at the OAW Patreon page. That is patreon.com/OAW. Hit up the blockbuster tier. That's the $30 tier. You can request either a film, the first 2 episodes of a 1-hour television series, or the first 4 episodes of a 30-minute series for me to review. You can also request a comic or a manga that you want me to look at. That's in the pull list tier, which is $25 tier. You can, let's see. Yeah, $20 tier. Advice Corner, which is a 30-minute live stream with me where we chop it up about some, a topic or a situation or a problem you want to talk about, which I got one of those coming. One of those is coming up. Let's see what else. Oh, and then of course the discussion of the week for just $15. You can request a topic for me to discuss in a live stream. Once again, patreon.com/OAW. Check out the tiers. I am currently accepting requests for the month of September. So if you want to get your request in, do not hesitate, because September 1st, requests close for that month. So make sure you can get yours in while you still can. So with that being said, and since I just mentioned it, Head Trip. Thank you for joining me tonight, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, join me later this week when I'm going to go ahead and give you all my review of American Psycho. That's the next one coming up. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I am signing off, and until next time, peace.